Welcome. I'm Catherine Shepard, and I am the Education Coordinator with the Alzheimer's Society, and I'm in Cape Breton. And so welcome for this afternoon's session, and I hope that you all enjoy and learn. One of the things my mom has always said to me is knowledge is power. And so when you know better, you do better. And so I hope at the end of today's session, we can all leave and thank Robin for giving us at least one more little tidbit to tuck away in our mind. A reminder that today's session is being recorded. Your microphones and cameras, of course, have been turned off so that your faces and voices will not be part of this recording. Today's topic, which is strategies for improving safety and preventing falls at home, is presented to us today by Robin. Robin is an occupational therapist with the Nova Scotia Health in the Western Zone. She has 14 years of experience working in the community with seniors and is a member of the Seniors Community Health Team that serves Lunenburg and Queens County. The Seniors Community Health Team is a team of healthcare professionals providing community-based assessments and interventions for seniors with complex healthcare needs and their families. Robin's focus is to help seniors and their families maintain their safety, health, and independence at home. So we will have about a 20 to 30 minute presentation and then some time for questions and answers at the end. So it's my pleasure now. Sit back and relax. I'm going to introduce Robin and she's going to take over the show. Thanks so much, Robin.
Not a problem. Thank you, Catherine. All right, let's see. So today I'm talking about falls prevention at home and different strategies and tips and tricks on how you can prevent those from happening. We'll go right into it. Maybe. There we go. So there are a number of reasons that that we fall. Age-related changes can increase your risk for falling, certainly, and falling and injuries they kind of go hand in hand. Some of the things that happen as we age, we have changes in our vision and perception, decreased muscle strength and endurance, decreased joint flexibility and muscle flexibility. We've got changes in balance and slower reflexes. So all of these things combined, one of these things can impact your risk for falls and injury. And there are just some things like minor little changes that you can make around the home that can have a big impact on your safety. Often what happens is these changes happen gradually and we may not notice that there are changes in our vision, in our strength, in our muscle or joint flexibility or our balance until something like a fall happens, and that's what we want to prevent. So we're going to go through some key areas from my perspective as an occupational therapist and the time I spend in individuals' homes. These are some of the things that I really look at and I find most often I'm making comments on or giving recommendations for. So we're going to talk about lighting. We're going to talk about accommodating the home and the environment for vision, clearing the path, and adaptive aids. So first thing we'll talk about is lighting. So when I enter a client's home, we go through the home together and we do a bit of an environmental screen or environmental scan. And one of the things we talk about quite often is lighting. And I ask people to take a look around the home and make note in particular of the dark or poorly lit areas around the home. Of particular importance are entrances and walkways and making sure that they're well lit so that you can see where you're going, and not just that you can see where you're going, but you can see where the hazards might be. And this, now that we're coming into winter, I hate to use that word, but the snow is falling and the ice comes with it, and so making sure that we can see if there is an accumulation of snow and ice on our outside pathways is really important. Then when we get inside, really looking at the areas of our home that are genuinely darker than others, or the use of light in general in your home. So night lights are really important. Most people do have night lights. often they're in high traffic areas, so hallways, that kind of thing. But it's really good to have them in places like your bathroom, or even in your bedroom. Or if you find that, that you're getting up at night to go to the kitchen for water or something like that, having night lights in those areas is really important too. And instead of diffuse light that comes from overhead lighting, table lamps are a really good idea as well. It's not as bright, it's not as glaring, and we can kind of adjust the amount of light in a room. And then putting lighting in closets. So if you're looking at, if those of us who are lucky enough to have walk-in closets, it's really important to be able to see what's in the closet and what it is that you're looking for. And often that's something that people overlook. They don't often think about keeping their closets well lit. I have there, watch out for dimmer switches on overhead lighting. Dimmer switches are great depending on the mood that you're trying to set. But often what happens is when you turn a light on, the dim feature, it's not always bright enough for what we need when we're coming into a room. And so, and the idea of turning the dimmer switch up and having it brighter in the room is sometimes forgotten when those dimmer switches are just sort of always on that one setting. Then the other thing to think about, especially if you've got a room where you have to cross the hall or cross the room in order to put on a table lamp, or in order to flip on a switch, is to try those glow in the dark light switches, or decals around the light switch to let you know where they are. It's sort of like trying to find your glasses without wearing your glasses. It's really hard to find a light switch in a dark room without having light on. And so having something that cues you to where that light switch is really helps to avoid some of that fumbling, or some of those walking in dark unlit rooms and bumping into things. I put in there about natural light. Natural light is a great resource for a lot of different reasons. For one, it's often a lot less harsh, and our vision is more accustomed to the natural light that we get from a window or a doorway. So opening blinds, opening curtains, trying to make your room as light as possible using that natural light during the day. It also helps with the circadian rhythms, and so keeping the daytime and the nighttime, and your body's natural recognition of when it's getting night and when you need to go to bed. So using natural light is really helpful for that. Sometimes for our individuals that have some of those behaviors related to their dementia, where they're getting more restless at night, when there's those changes in light, often having more exposure to that natural light during the day is helpful for that. Then it's really important, you've got these blinds and curtains open during the day for that natural light. It's really important to remember to close those blinds at night to prevent glare or reflection on the windows, because it can be really quite confusing or distressing to somebody with a cognitive impairment or with a diagnosis of dementia to be looking out and seeing an individual staring back at them, even though it's just their own reflection, or to be seeing bright lights from passing cars or that kind of thing. So remembering to close those blinds at night is really important. And as we get older, it does take our eyes a little bit longer to adjust to changes in light. And so if you think about coming inside from outside, it's a brightly lit sunny day, or if there's snow on the ground and it's a really bright snowy afternoon, and then you're coming inside and the environment is naturally going to be darker, it does take your eyes, it can be up to 20 minutes for your eyes to fully adjust to those changes in light. And so having the ability to turn the light up gradually, or to keep the light at a consistent level is really important for helping our eyes to adjust. Accommodating for vision changes. So as we age, our vision changes. The other thing that happens is our perception of what we see and how we interpret what we see can also change. And that's for a number of different reasons. This can be especially true though when you have somebody that has a cognitive impairment or a diagnosis of a dementia. They may not quite understand what it is they're seeing or interpret what they're seeing correctly. So one of the things that happens as our vision and our eyes get older is our ability to perceive depth, distance, and interpret 3D objects versus picture objects changes. And so when you're making changes around your home, or when you're taking a look at your home and thinking about the different things that you can do to make it safer, some things to consider are the depth perception issues. And so avoiding placing dark rugs on the floor, that black hole phenomenon. You've got a light floor with this giant black circle. It can, somebody might interpret that as a giant hole, and they might try to step around it, or it could cause distress. Painting the edges of stairs. Stairs are one of those things that, depending on how you look at them, they can change. And the way that we look at them, if there's less contrast to the rise over the run, it can be harder to see where it is we're stepping. So painting the edge of the stairs can make it really a lot easier to see each individual step on the stair. As our eyes get older, there's less of an ability to distinguish between colors or contrast. And so when you're designing your home, or when you're making changes around the home, things to consider is increasing that contrast and making it more obvious. So for example, putting a darker colored toilet seat on your white toilet as opposed to a white toilet seat, or changing the color of your toilet water using a blue dye or a blue tab, can help make it that much easier to see where the seat of the toilet is versus the surrounding, white tub or tiled floor. Painting a darker strip on the edge of our tub. Again, our bathrooms for the most part tend to be one single color, whether it's white or something else. And so as we get older and our vision changes, it all kind of melds into one. And so it can be really hard to see where one thing starts and the other thing ends. And so putting those color contrasts on is really important, like the strip on the edge of the tub that gives you a cue as to stepping over it. And then if you're putting handrails up, consider the color of your walls. If you've got white walls, you're not going to want to put a light colored handrail on because it makes it less easy to see. And the opposite is true. If you've got dark walls, you're not going to put a dark colored handrail on the wall. You really want something that's got more of a contrast. The concept of the shrinking field of vision and less peripheral vision, so the vision that's on the sides. What can happen as we get older is our vision literally starts to tunnel in until you really just see what's in front of you. And so if you think about the hazards that are involved in that, if you're only seeing what's in front of you, you're not necessarily seeing what's below your field of vision or what's on the sides. And so taking that into consideration and adjusting your environment accordingly, removing things off the floor that could be trip hazards, or trying to keep things like your pets away from your feet. If you don't see it, you can't avoid it. And so trying to really fix the environment to the point where you're going to have less to trip over. So these are just some examples of what I was talking about with contrast. And so you can see in the one photo, you've got a white bed and a white blanket on the bed. And really, you've got a white floor and white walls and white furniture. If you had difficulty with vision, it would just sort of look like a giant white room, and maybe you would see some edges of things. And so if you went to go sit on the bed, for instance, but you really weren't sure where the edge of the bed was because it sort of melded in with the color of the room. Whereas in the other image, it's something as simple as putting a darker blanket on the edge of the bed, and that really outlines where the bed starts and where the room ends. And so if you go to sit down on that, you're more likely to sit down on the edge of the bed and not something that you perceive to be the edge of the bed, but which is actually closer to the floor. We have a lot of our clients, they don't necessarily talk about it as a fall. They talk about it more as like a gradual slide. And so they go to sit down on something and they may miss the edge of it. And so instead of falling thump onto the ground, they sort of gradually slide to the ground, which is technically still considered a fall. But a lot of people don't always think of it that way. And then this is an example of what I was talking about with the darker handrail against the lighter wall and painting the strips of the stairwell, or painting strips on the stairwell. So you can really see the difference here in the contrast. It's a lot easier to see the stairs with the black strip on them, and it's definitely a lot easier to see that dark handrail. And it's really a simple thing to do. It costs very little, except some time to do some paint on the edge of your stairs and to change the color of your handrail. And then this isn't necessarily relating to falls, but it does pertain to vision and how vision impacts our ability to sort of do everything that we need to do, the occupations of our life. And one of the things that can happen as we go through our cognitive impairment or our dementia into the different stages is we lose the ability to feed ourselves and to eat efficiently. And one of the considerations for that is how the environment is set up for that. And so on here, if you look at the contrast in the two different pictures, so you've got a white plate on a white placemat and a white mug. And so think about if you then put white food on that plate. So you've got mashed potatoes on that plate or something white, or you've got milk in that cup or something. It could be really hard for somebody to see that. And so if you can't see it, how are they going to use their fork, or how are they going to eat it if they don't know that it's there? Whereas if you look at the darker plate, you can, the contrast of colors would come up a lot more, and that would potentially cue somebody to notice that there was something on their plate. And then of course you've got the darker mug that really allows you to see the color contrast between what would be in the mug. So clearing the path, that was the other one. Removing clutter and making sure that the stairwells, hallways, and pathways are as clear and as accessible as possible. One of the things that I do when I go into a home is I make recommendations on how to get the clearest pathway or the widest amount of room possible. And often that involves clearing out clutter, which can be challenging because if you've lived 80 plus years, you've lived and you've collected and you've got treasures, and often what happens too is our clients have downsized, so they've gone from large homes to potentially 1 or 2 bedroom apartments or condos, but they haven't really wanted to get rid of all of their treasures, all of their furniture and things that have meaning to them. And so then they try to cram all of these other objects into a much smaller space. And so you can see how that would definitely increase the clutter, and it would use up all of that free space. So that can be a really challenging thing for some of our individuals, and some of our clients. They need help with that to really pinpoint what is important, what is necessary, and if it really is necessary to keep something, how do we keep it in our home in a way that's not going to get in our way, that's not going to impact our falls risk. Removing or tacking down throw rugs. Again, that's something that we talk about on a regular basis. It's sort of like a battle of wills sometime as to what to do with those throw rugs or those area rugs. And the reason we talk about them being such a challenge is because as we get older, our gait changes. And so we tend to, instead of lifting our feet off the ground, we tend to shuffle. And so if you're shuffling your feet more, you're shuffling your toes along the ground. And if there's something like a throw rug that's not tacked down or not stable, as you're not stepping over or onto that rug, you're stepping across it, and it can wrinkle and get caught up in your feet and cause a fall. Or if you've got a walker or a cane and you're using that and you're pushing that across an area that's got a throw rug on it, the likelihood of you catching the wheels or the skis of your walker on an area rug is a lot higher. So we talk about the pluses and the minuses. A lot of times people, they really have deep personal feelings about their throw rugs. It could be family heirlooms, or it could be something that they've made themselves, or it could be disguising something on the floor that they don't want others to see, like, ripped linoleum or tile or maybe carpet that that is old and doesn't get cleaned as well. Or it can be something like really wanting to protect their home from people who come into their home and don't take their shoes off. I know one of your presenters was talking about sort of home care inadvertently. One of the rules is that we're not allowed to go into clients' homes and remove our shoes and be barefoot or sock foot. So we have to keep our shoes on, which can be disturbing for some individuals, especially if they're afraid that we're going to track dirt, mud, snow, ice, all of that across their floors. So there can be a lot of reasons for people wanting to keep their throw rugs, but figuring out a compromise and a way to do that so that we can increase their safety. Getting rid of unnecessary or unstable furniture, that's part of that decreasing the clutter piece. Really making sure that that the furniture that you need and the furniture that you have close by is what's needed. Or if there's anything that's unstable, like a chair or a table that might have uneven legs. Or even potentially something like a rocking chair. They're not the safest thing for somebody to just sit down in, because they tend to move as you go to sit down in them. One thing to consider with getting rid of unnecessary or unstable furniture or changing the environment in general is to be consistent or to be considerate of the furniture placement and what somebody is used to. So somebody may have a really good strategy of, we call it furniture walking, where they're hanging onto things in their home instead of using a walker or a wheelchair. They use their furniture. And so if you're having the idea of you're gonna clear the path and you're gonna get rid of all of this unnecessary furniture, it may seem unnecessary to you, but consider how your loved one is using that, and if there's a way to be flexible around what you're going to remove, or what might be safe and what might be actually increasing the hazard for falls. When you're thinking about clearing the path, or if you're making any kind of accessibility renovations to your home or anything like that, walkers and wheelchairs need 34 to 36 inches of clear space to be used safely, to be used successfully. And so that's without being able to go through doorways, without grinding on knuckles or that kind of thing, or catching the skis of the walker or the wheels of the walker on furniture or on doorways. You really do, it's important to have that 34 to 36 inches if possible. I like this picture. It's from the Government of Canada website, and it just talks about, I can't remember, I think there's 50 hazards or something like that in this photo. And it lists them all. The parts that I like on this, it really does clearly outline kind of how things like furniture and throw rugs and clutter on the stairwells, how that really impacts how your environment is set up, and how it could, like, if you look at this room, how there are so many opportunities and options for somebody to get caught up and trip and fall. So I like using it as an example. I want to talk about some adaptive aids. So one of the ways that we can help with preventing falls and increasing safety is to accommodate for that decrease in strength, flexibility, balance, the things that happen with typical aging. We use adaptive equipment. As an occupational therapist, I spend a lot of my career in people's bathrooms, and there's a reason for that. The bathroom is a really common place where falls happen, and there are a lot of reasons for that. There are slippery surfaces, there's bare feet, water on the floor, and bathrooms can also be one of, if you fall in a bathroom, it can be really harmful if you think about the way that the bathroom is set up. So there are hard surfaces to come up against. There are small spaces, and you often have exposed skin in the bathroom, which puts you at greater risk for injury. So there are really simple things that you can do to really prevent or help with preventing some of these falls. And a lot of it involves equipment, adaptive equipment, like tub benches or bath chairs or raised toilet seats in your tubs, in your showers, in your bathroom in general. And then making sure that you've got a mat outside your tub that's absorbent or non-slip. and I have there no towels, because often people will use a towel because they don't want their floor to get wet, and so they use a towel to absorb the water. The difficulty with towels is that there's nothing to keep that from moving when you step on it, especially if you've got it on like a tile or linoleum floor. So I often tell people, don't use a towel, just get a non-slip mat. Like you can get them at Walmart, you can get them at any home store. One of the things to think about too is keeping the toilet lid down. So if you're going to be doing anything in the bathroom, if you're going to be showering, if you're going to be standing at the sink for any length of time, keeping the toilet lid down is a good idea, because it can be a really quick place to sit if you need it. If you lose your balance, or if for whatever reason you lose your or you get dizzy, or you need to have a place to sit to rest, it's right there. It's a built-in seat. Raised toilet seats, toilet commodes, or toilet safety frames are really helpful too when getting on and off the toilet. The toilets are designed in a way that really is helpful from a body mechanics standpoint for elimination, for using the toilet, and for being able to have an effective bowel movement. The problem is those heights are often really difficult to get up from if we've got decreased balance, strength, flexibility in our muscles and our joints. And so having a raised toilet seat or a toilet safety frame or something that has some armrests on it so that we can use our arms and hands as well as our legs to get up off a toilet is really, really helpful. A lot of homes now are being built with the higher toilets. So they're a couple of inches, the toilet itself is built a couple of inches higher than a typical toilet. And individuals are finding those really, really helpful, because it can be a matter of something like 2 to 4 inches that makes all the difference in being able to get up and down independently. So around the rest of the house, the grab bars are fantastic. They can be installed really anywhere, not just in the bathroom. I recommend grab bars around the bathroom all the time, around tubs, showers, toilets, but they can be put in entryways, they can be put in stairwells, they can be put near your bed, anywhere where you would typically be reaching out to grab a hold of something to help you to either stand up or sit down. Floor to ceiling poles and bed rails can be really helpful in the bedroom to help with getting on and off the bed. A lot of times our beds are either too high or they're too low, depending on how many mattresses you have, if you have a box spring, what your bed frame looks like. And so having something to help with getting in the bed when the bed is too high is really helpful. You can use a ceiling pole or a bed rail to help pull yourself up onto the bed. Or if the bed is too low, it can be really difficult to get out of a low bed. And again, using a bed rail or a floor to ceiling transfer pole is really helpful, because it allows you to use your arms as well as your legs for getting out of bed. Making sure that all of the floors in your house are as clean and dry as possible is really key. Using non-slip decals or mats in the tub and shower. I prefer the decal option, because mats tend to, unless you're cleaning them on a regular basis, they tend to accumulate soap scum or mold, and they can get slippery. And so they actually become less of a help and more of a hazard at that point. And so I often recommend the decals, because they're built with they're created with a non-skid kind of rougher surface, and they're a lot easier to clean in your typical everyday cleaning of the tub and the shower. Making sure any entryways, many mats that you have in your entryways are non-slip as well. That's really important. A lot of times we have entry mats in our entryway because we don't want our floors to get dirty when we come in from outside, and it's really key that those have that non-slip backing on them too, or that they're made of some kind of rubber material. Using transfer bars to help get in and out of the car. The car is not necessarily a place in your home, but that is a place where I often get clients talk about how they really do have difficulty getting in and out of their car, or their loved one really has difficulty with getting in and out of the car. And for the same reason as beds, cars can be either too low or they can be too high to get in and out of safely and independently. So using a transfer bar, and I've got some examples of some types. They call them things like car canes or handy bars to get in and out of the car. And they're something that rests, I have one right here. There's something that rests in the edge of the car door. And so you just slide it in there, and then you grab a hold of the handrail and you push up. It's sort of like a portable grab bar, basically. And then using a transfer disc or something as simple as a plastic bag on the seat of the car can really help with getting your legs swung around. So again, that takes a certain amount of dexterity, of flexibility, and of strength in your joints and your muscles in order to be able to lift your feet high enough to clear the edge of the car, and then to be able to move around at the same time. And so often what we do is we recommend just using a plastic bag. Those are harder to come by now that we've gone plastic free, but using something like a garbage bag, even, you can just put that on the seat of the car before you go to sit down on it, and it really makes it that much easier to get in and out of the car. That is the entirety of my presentation for today. Are there any questions? We'll open it up for that.
Thank you so much, Robin. What a fantastic presentation, filled with so much great information that I think, a lot of times it just really brings it back to the forefront of our mind. We really need to think about things, especially with our winter time coming, even though nobody wants to talk about it. It's really important that we think about those things that are important as well. I often say to people, in the winter time, it gets dark really early. We always talk about lighting, and I love the fact that you started your presentation today talking about light and how important it is. But let's use the outside light as well. So making sure you have a good light in your outdoor light, that your stairs outside are clean, that you have, salt or the sand or whatever on anything that might be slippery to kind of help with those things too. Because just like, the car, and we forget how difficult it might be. Well, we have to get from the car then into our house. So we do have to think about all of those things, especially now that winter is knocking on our door. I know it's coming, even though today here in Cape Breton, it was 17 degrees.
Yeah, it's quite warm here in Lunenburg today as well.
Not going to last. So
no,
I know. So we do have a couple of questions that have come in. One is in reference to the equipment that you were talking about. How or where would I find the equipment that I need?
Sure. So there are lots of places that you can purchase equipment. Most home health pharmacies have equipment. They either have them in the store or they have them that you can order them in. What I often recommend before you go out and purchase them, because they're not inexpensive pieces of equipment, they can be anywhere between $50 to $150, and so you want to really make sure that it's going to work for you. The Red Cross in Nova Scotia is a brilliant place where you can get equipment to loan. They have something called the Home Equipment Loan Program, HELP, where you can, if you have a recommendation from a healthcare professional like an occupational therapist, a physiotherapist, family doctors, even community pharmacists can fill out these forms. So you don't have to have a primary healthcare practitioner. Mm-hmm. You just take that, and then you can have a 3-month loan from the Red Cross of any number of different equipment. They've got all of those tub benches and seats and toilet risers. They have bed rails, all of those kinds of things. So you can try it before you buy it, essentially, for up to 3 months. And if something doesn't work, then you can always try the next thing, because our homes are really laid out differently. Our bathrooms are laid out differently. And so standard equipment that may work in one place doesn't necessarily work in the other. So the Red Cross is a really good place to start.
That's great. And maybe what we'll do is we'll put a website, if there's a Red Cross website, we can always put that in the chat box for people. And of course, that way, if there are any questions, they can certainly connect with Red Cross that way. Another question kind of came in, kind of part B, I guess. What about grab bars? How do I know where to put them, or are they easy to install? Is that something that a company would have to do for me, or is that something I can do for myself?
You don't have to have a professional install a grab bar. There are just some really key things to remember when you're putting a grab bar in place. So grab bars are something that you're grabbing hold of to steady yourself and to support yourself. And so you really want it to be placed somewhere where it's going to be easily reached, but it's really important that they're securely fastened to the wall. And the way of doing that is putting them in the wall studs. So you're limited a little bit in where you can put some of your grab bars depending on where your wall studs are. So they have to either span a wall stud or go up and down on a wall stud. They can be installed horizontally, they can be installed vertically, they can be installed diagonally. Really, there's no limit to how you can install them, provided that you have the wall stud. What I recommend to people is think about where your area of reach is. And so if you're sitting down on the toilet, for one, and you're trying to get into a standing position, you're not going to put the grab bar up at a standing height. You're going to really put it down to where your sitting height is, because that's where you're going to be using it. And so something to consider is putting it between the shoulder and the hip. So if you're not quite sure, you don't need to be, it's not an exact science necessarily, just making sure that it's between the user's hip and shoulder height, and making sure again that it's installed securely into a grab bar. Often people are like, oh, well, I'll just I hang on to my curtain or towel rod, so I'll just replace where my towel rod is. But again, if you think about it, your towel rod it's holding a couple of ounces of a towel, and so it doesn't necessarily need to be installed into something as supportive as the wall studs. But if you're going to put your 100+ pound body weight through that as you're trying to arrest a fall or you're trying to steady yourself, it really does need to be securely fastened into those wall studs. Some people wonder about how to find the wall stud. That's where Friendly Neighborhood Carpenter can come in, but you can also easily find a stud finder at Canadian Tire or places like that. And there are building codes that talk about distance between doorways and distance between window frames, where you're pretty much guaranteed to find a wall stud. So it's not a complicated process.
All right. And tell me this, what about stepping up from the toilet? So if you don't have a raised toilet seat, is there an apparatus that you can use, like a grab bar for the toilet? We often talk about shower grab bars, but what about something for by the toilet?
Yeah, for sure. The grab bars really are your only limit is where the wall studs are. You can put them on every single wall of your home, provided that you can put them into a wall stud. And so if your toilet is next to a wall that allows you to have the grab bar put in at the place that is most convenient or that works for you, you can always put a grab bar into the wall by the toilet. Sometimes, depending on where the toilets are, there aren't any available walls around, and so a grab bar is not an option for getting on and off the toilet. And that's where things like over the toilet commodes, which is essentially exactly like it sounds. It's a commode chair that goes over the toilet. And it raises the height, but it also acts like a chair, and it's got armrests that you can push off of. Or there are toilet safety frames which connect to the back of the tub, and they act as handrails on the toilet. It doesn't change the height of the toilet, but it acts as something that you can push up to help get on and off the toilet.
Okay, that's really good to know too. Another question has come in to say, would the car cane that you talked about, would that be at a local pharmacy? Could you find that at your local home health pharmacy?
You absolutely can. They have them at Walmart, and they have them at Canadian Tire as well. I know that I've purchased them there as well. But if you're looking for the exact brand, I mean, honestly, it doesn't really matter branding. If you're looking for it, you're not sure where it is, the home health departments are a really good resource, because they're very aware of what's in their in their home health departments. And if they don't have it, they can always order it in for you, which is really, really helpful. Depending on where you order it from, it can be a bit of a cost, but I know I've purchased them from Canadian Tire for under $20, whereas some of them are a little bit more expensive, around $40, but they're really, really handy.
Great. What are your thoughts on footwear?
I was talking with a colleague of mine about doing this presentation today, and she said, "Are you going to talk about footwear?" And I said, "I would love to, but I have 30 minutes, and I can do an entire 30 minutes only on footwear, because footwear is huge, and it's one of those things like the wagon wheel effect that you've got a couple of spokes of the wheel, and footwear is one of them, where if it's not working right, it can really contribute to your falls. So there are some really key things to consider when you're looking at footwear. Things that are easily slipped on are also easily slipped off. And so if you're thinking about wandering around or walking around your home, and you really want something on your foot to help support your foot, but you have difficulty with reaching down, with perhaps, you know, getting the heel around, it's really important to recognize that if you are going to wear footwear around your home or outside for that matter, that it has an enclosed toe, so to protect the toe box, your toes, but it also has an enclosed heel so that it keeps your foot in the shoe where it needs to be. The other thing that is really important when you're considering a shoe is what type of sole it has. And so if it's got a leather sole or if it's got a cloth sole, we're talking about flippers at this point. Those things are a lot more slippery than a rubber sole. So if you're looking at slippers, it's really important to make sure that your slipper has a rubber non-slip sole on it, as opposed to those lovely slippers that my grandmother used to knit, that they were beautiful and they were super comfortable, but whew, you could slide across the linoleum like nobody's business. So think those are really two key things to think about. And then something that you could potentially tighten onto your foot, so with laces. So if you're looking at like a sneaker or something like that, something that is going to stay secure on your foot, but it's also, you have to think about the ease of getting it on and off. So something that you're not necessarily going to have to, like a running shoe, that you're not necessarily going to have to tie up, something that potentially would be like enclosed. So one thing that we often recommend if people are wearing sneakers, because those are a really great option, is they have these little adaptive shoelaces that you just pull on them and then it tightens the entire shoe up. So as opposed to having to have the fine motor dexterity to be able to do the tie, something like that is really helpful. Again, those things are there's all kinds of adaptive equipment at home health pharmacies. And then heel height is really important to consider too, is to make sure that the heel is not too high. We've got our generation of women who are used to wearing heels, and something as high as like a 2-inch heel can really impact your balance, and it can help, or it can contribute to falling. So something with a lower heel is always recommended.
So one of the things that we always talk about with footwear is people love to sort of wear their slippers, right, out and about. And so I think it's really important that you said, think about, those beautiful knitted slippers, but think about how slippery they can be and how quickly and in a moment it happens, right? You're up and then you're down before you know it.
I often will recommend, if you have no other option, then just to go barefoot. And a lot of times that's not appealing for people because of floor and heat and all of that kind of stuff. But barefoot is often way better than sock feet or improper footwear when you're walking around your home.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. I know, we always talk about that it takes a community to prevent a fall, and we all have a role to play in that. And where we're coming from across the province right now, I'm wondering if people don't have a Robin that lives in their community that can help them out. Who are other people on that team that can support?
For sure. So in Lunenburg, Queens County, we've got the Seniors Community Health Team, which is where I work. We've also, the community rehab is a really good resource, and most of the zones, all of the zones actually across across Nova Scotia have a community rehab of some form, so physiotherapists or occupational therapists in their community. And those are individuals that you can self-refer to through your hospital, or you can get your family practitioner, nurse practitioner, family doctor to refer to those programs. The other thing, if you don't have a family doctor, because they are also a great resource, but if you don't have a primary care practitioner, somebody like your community pharmacist is really key, can be really key in supporting you and preventing falls too. Medication is one of those things. It's a high predictor of falls. It can increase your risk factors for falling tenfold. If you're on 5 or more medications, it's always a good idea to go to your community pharmacist and get them to do a medication review to make sure that none of those medications are impacting or contributing to your risk for falls. So every community has several community pharmacists. So that's always a really good place to start as well.
Yeah. And I know in our area, we do have that issue with family doctors, but community pharmacists are so supportive as well. You know, and if people are watching, or if you're rewatching, or if someone has joined us and watching this now on our YouTube channel, you know, if you do have any questions or you're wondering, people can always reach out to us at the Alzheimer's Society as well. And, you know, depending on where you are in the province, we can kind of help facilitate different ideas of who's on that team as well. Okay, final question that's just come in. If someone does fall, what should we consider?
Yeah, if the unspeakable happens, yeah.
That's right.
So one thing to think about is don't hurry. So if you've fallen, it can be shocking to somebody. Obviously, it's not something that you plan or expect to happen. And often people don't even realize it's happened until they're on the floor. It's really important to take a breath and just don't try to get up right away. What happens when we fall? Our adrenaline kicks in, and so we may not be experiencing pain at that moment. So we could have potentially injured ourselves and not be aware of it. And so if you just take a minute, take a few deep breaths and do like a quick body scan and figure out, am I hurt? And if I am hurt, where, and whether, that'll really determine whether or not you should get up. One of the things that I always tell the clients that I see is the EHS, the paramedics, the emergency health service have a program or a lift assist program. So if you fall down and you're not sure if you're hurt, or if you're just really concerned, or if a family member is with you and they're really concerned, you can call 911. And they will send the paramedics to your house. The paramedics will do a lift assist, which means they'll help you get up off the floor. Or if you've gotten up already, they'll do a once over. And so they'll basically, with their medical background, they'll take a look and they'll make sure that nothing's broken. They'll do a quick check to see if you've hit your head, potentially look for concussion. And then they'll recommend whether or not you should go to the hospital to get checked out. And if you don't go to the hospital to get checked out, there's no cost for getting the paramedics to come visit you. The cost is when you get transported. And so I have clients who called EHS a couple of times in a day because they've had a couple of falls, and the paramedics have helped get them up off the floor. Of course, by the second or third time, then they're generally encouraging you to maybe go to the hospital. But the other thing that's really interesting and really helpful with EHS is a lot of, depending on where you are in the zone, a lot of the paramedics have something called a falls prevention program, where they actually, if they're getting a lot of these lift assist calls to homes, they'll actually refer you to their falls prevention program, which connects you to a community occupational therapist or physiotherapist or something like the seniors community health team. And they will go in and they will help with doing a bit of an assessment of your environment and of yourself, and help you to prevent some of those falls in the future.
That's great information to know too. Oftentimes I tell people, if it's your person with dementia that has fallen, stop for a minute, just like you said, take a breath, make eye contact, let everybody, come back to where they started. And really, you want to speak slowly and allow them to take a minute to kind of get to where they are, which is, on the floor, unfortunately, at that point. And making sure you're taking the time that's needed for that person who may be struggling a little bit more to understand cognitively what has just happened. So being mindful not to invade somebody's space. Out of love, we jump in oftentimes very quickly, but taking a moment to make eye contact and speak nice and slow and clear so that, everybody is comfortable with the next steps that are going to happen. I think
about perception, and if somebody's fallen and they may not be aware of why they're falling, and then you jump in and you start tugging on their hands and on their body, and it can be really alarming, and it can add even more to an already tenuous situation. So absolutely, a hands-off approach is always best.
Yeah. And I often think too, for the care partner that's involved, we want to make sure that they're protecting themselves and against injury as well, and trying to help somebody up sometimes if we don't always know the correct way to help and support and move, an injury can happen really quickly for you too. And so that's really important for people to recognize, bathtubs, trying to help somebody up out of a bathtub, sometimes it's such an awkward position. So we often say to people, think about what can be used as support. I love the idea of being able to connect people to that community team, getting people connected with an OT, where we're looking at having somebody to come in to support them, meaning they're not going to take, tasks away from people. We're not going to take, the meaningful and purposeful duties that people do in their own home, especially a person with dementia, but we're going to have a task modification. Right. So our OT is going to do that task modification for this person with dementia. They're still going to be purposeful and meaningful and useful. And that's really important to remember too. So being safe at home, maybe it just means task modification. And so I think, keeping that in mind as well.
Yeah.
So thank you, Robin, so much. Your thoughtful answers and all of your knowledge and education that you bring to the table today has certainly given us food for thought. I will say to everybody, you will see a poll on your screen, so please take a minute to respond to that. Thank you to everybody for tuning in today. And by tuning in today, you also notice that our end of our screen shot here is our 1-800 number. That 1-800 number is the Alzheimer's Society information line. And so you can reach out to that number. It is confidential. We can support you through questions if you have any as you travel through this journey, whether you're a person living with dementia or a care partner.